Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. Hey, we're in a different spot than we have been. Typically, this is the third social media platform we've streamed the podcast on. We started on YouTube, went over to Facebook for a little bit. Now we're on Twitch. Really excited about that. We've got a new home to tell you guys about. If you guys are watching at home or listening at home, you can find us now at twitch.tv/3C Media. So we're moving on up, B. Scott.
Yeah, we are. Hey, I remember when we started off just doing me calling you and you recording the podcast from your phone and onto your computer, and
that was the old SoundCloud days. We have traversed the social media world. We've gone SoundCloud, we've gone Facebook. Now we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts can be heard. So we're all over the place.
That's right, we are.
And we're
worldwide. That's why we've changed it to 3C Media.
Exactly. We are just spanning the globe. We're going to get into some Pacers talk. We're going to get into some college football talk. Of course, the Colts go 2-2 through that rough stretch of games. About what we expected, B. Scott. We're just talking about that.
Better than I expected.
Yeah, exactly. Very easily could have gone 1-3, but if you look at it, they could have gone 4-0.
Or 0-4.
Or 0-4. But you know what? I'll take 500 any day of the week through that tough stretch of games. And then we're also going to let B. Scott vent for a little bit about Purdue football because I think that's a couple of weeks in the making, B. Scott, right?
Yeah, I don't want to get fined or anything.
But... well, first of all, B. Scott, our listeners at home know of you, but go ahead and introduce yourself to the Twitch universe here.
Well, Twitch, I'm Brandon, otherwise known as B. Scott. Craig and I actually started off on radio together back in the old Cardinal College game day years, and that's actually kind of we're going back to that here tonight with the conference realignment talk. That was one of our weekly topics back in 2010. That was the hot issue at that point in time.
But yeah, podcast 10 years in the making because I didn't realize that conference realignment has been about 10 years.
Yeah, and that's when we did CCG back in the day. Went on from CCG to the living room to watch the late night football games. Yep. It was
a lot of fun, and hey, we're excited to be here on Twitch. Like I said, twitch.tv/3C Media is where we're going to be next week. So if you're watching now on my personal Twitch page, go ahead, go drop a follow if you're interested. We talk mainly stuff around here in the Midwest, a lot of Indiana stuff, Pacers, Colts, Purdue, Notre Dame, IU, but we also talk about stuff on the national scale as well. So the thing locally we're going to talk about today is we are going to get into some NBA, some Pacers talk. So let's go ahead and get right into it here. The Pacers had one draft pick. It was in the second round, but they do get Duke guard Cassius Stanley. He averaged 3 points per game, 5 rebounds in his only season at Duke. He set the Duke record for the vertical jump that was previously held by Zion, so obviously keeping some good company there. He was at 45 inches. He was also he also made the All ACC freshman team. He's described as a 6'6" pure athlete. He was mentored by Russell Westbrook. So you know what? Those are all pretty superb ingredients. Like when you break down the NBA draft, it's only 2 rounds. So you think about it, if you look at it in like NFL terms, that's like what, 4th, 5th rounder once you get to the maybe 6th where you get to where the Pacers were.
I don't know. That was like late 5th, early 6th maybe.
Right. So like you think about, you're not, in the NFL when you get to that point, you're not really thinking about getting a player that's going to make a whole lot of impact. You're kind of just throwing caution to the wind and making a selection. But you know what? With that selection, I'm pretty cautiously optimistic about what they can do, and I think what makes me the most kind of optimistic and the most have the most like hope in this pick is that we talked about it when Nate Bjorkgren got hired by the Pacers, is all of his experience with the G League and like younger talent, and so having all that experience with young talent and being able to mold them into future NBA stars, that makes me really excited because Stanley has a lot of raw athleticism, and so I think that we're gonna see Bjorkgren really be able to mold the talent that Cassius Stanley has. So I'm really excited to see what the Pacers can do with this pick. So you think about it, it's kind of a part of the draft where we weren't really too sure what to expect. We weren't really too this wasn't really a draft pick we were expecting, but really excited for what the Pacers have in Cassius Stanley.
Yeah, me too. This is a pick that a lot of GMs had him graded out as a first round pick. And just because of other team needs ahead of the Pacers and everything, and he was also he was also on Duke. You can get overshadowed when you play at Duke, honestly. But a lot of GMs held him very high regards, and actually the Pacers had him as a first round grade as well. So the fact that he fell to them in the middle of the second round, that was lucky in essence. I don't think that's truly a knock on him. I just feel like that's based on needs of other teams and how, you get to that point and it's basically how other teams grade. They all grade differently, but a lot of teams did look at this player as a first round talent. And at one point he was considered a first round talent by draft experts or whatever that means. But I'm very excited about this. When I see Cassius Stanley, I'm not seeing a player that has been a prototypical Pacers draftee. The guy the Goga Batadze,
The Tyler Hansboroughs.
Oh, don't knock on Tyler Hansbrough.
I'm not. I love Tyler Hansbrough. I'm just saying.
Tyler Hansbrough did not fall in line of the end of the bench street clothes dweller. I'm thinking of I hate to say it, but the Alize Johnsons.
Yeah.
This is a player that is he going to come in and be an immediate impact? No. This is going to be a player that's probably going to be sent back and forth between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis a couple times. But at the same time, Nate Bjorkgren's probably going to do some really good development with him. I can honestly see him potentially being like a Nate Sumner type player for the Pacers. We're starting to see Nate Sumner have more of a role with the organization now than he had in the past. He took a couple of years to develop. Now, however, Nate Sumner coming into the draft was coming off of an injury. So that there is a little bit of a difference there. I think Cassius Stanley is also much, much more athletic than Nate Sumner. But I think because of his athleticism, he's actually going to get to see some time with the Pacers. Is he going to get 10, 15 minutes a game? No, he may log 5 minutes here and there. He's going to see a lot more time than TJ Leaf ever did. I can guarantee you that. Thank goodness the Pacers basically traded him in a second round draft pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder just to get rid of him. Finally. But Cassius Stanley, I think he's actually going to be a contributor within the near future for the Pacers. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a rotational player before too long as well.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there 100% because like I said, that's the one thing where even though I was kind of lukewarm on the whole Bjorkgren hire, the fact that he's got all that experience with younger players, I think that's one thing that's really going to help out in this instance when you get a player, especially because we were talking about, hey, how do they trade back into the early rounds? And so the fact that they didn't happen to do that and they still got a great talent, that's awesome. And if you're able to mold him into anything close to even I think Nate Sumner might be the floor as far as the possibilities we could go to. I think he could possibly be a little bit even more impactful than that. So I'm really excited to see what he can do.
I could honestly see him eventually even surpassing Aaron Holiday as a key contributor as well. That's probably the ceiling. Let's be honest. That's probably the ceiling. I would not be the least bit surprised though to see Cassius Stanley win the dunk contest once or twice in his career.
Hey, I'm here for it, and I mean, I'm always here for the dunks. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think too that because preseason for NBA starts in like 2 weeks,
Like
doesn't it?
a week.
Yeah,
It's gonna be here before I think. Yeah, I think it is next week to be honest, because the first games are played around Christmas.
yeah. So we're already getting kind of back into that swing of things. So we talked
Didn't we
about.
just crown a champion?
Yeah, we just crowned a champion at the end of July or no, not at the end of July. That's when they started. It was end of
like the beginning of November.
Yeah, beginning of November. That's what it was. It was like late October. That's what it was. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we just literally crowned a champion. Now we're getting ready to go again. It's going to be a shortened little stint of a season, but it's going to be fun to watch. And so we have to kind of condense all this talk of off season into this kind of short little period, and so you have the draft. You're excited about getting Cassius Stanley. There's rumors swirling around that the Pacers might possibly get Gordan Hayward. Gordan Hayward's possibly going to come home.
Gordan Hayward wanted to come home,
and yeah, B Scott sends me a message that says is basically an article that says that Gordan Hayward is focused on coming back to Indiana, but no, he pulls the old not so fast, my friend. He decides he's going to sign with the Charlotte Hornets for 4 years, $120 million. He was originally projected to, like I said, go to the Pacers. At one point, the Pacers were offering Miles Turner and Doug McDermott. The Boston Celtics, the team he was currently on, wanted Miles Turner and either Warren or Oladipo. And you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, I think it looks a lot worse on Boston than anything else. I think Boston wanted a little bit too much for what the Pacers were willing to part with for Hayward, because Hayward's a great player. It's kind of like what I've always kind of said, and it what's frustrating about it is that you hear all this stuff about, the Pacers can't get notable free agents because it's a small market, because nobody wants to play in Indiana because it's a players league. They'd rather play in New York, they'd rather play in LA, wherever. And yet the Pacers kind of get, now granted, Gordan Hayward's not, a top, 10 player that's going to go change your franchise, but he's going to be a nice piece, great player in the league. You get an opportunity to get him, and instead another team that's also a small market team just throws an absurdly high amount of money at him, and now the Pacers are left with nothing to show for it. So that's kind of the frustrating thing. But you know what? It goes back to what I've always said, in the sense that, I'm all here for it. I'm here for it. If Gordan Hayward, if someone's willing to pay Gordan Hayward that amount of money, you know what? I don't blame him for taking it. He's kind of on the back end.
He's on the back end of his career.
Yeah, on the back end of his career, and not really, and I don't think he would have gotten that anywhere else. Certainly I wouldn't have wanted the Pacers to give him that contract. So, and you know what? In the Eastern Conference, that probably puts the Hornets in the playoffs. And you know what? It is, I will say this, B. Scott, too. It is funny that it's the Hornets that take Gordan Hayward away, because I feel like the Hornets have been a thorn in the side of the Pacers for some random reason, whether it be when they had Kimba or now when they have now that they take Gordan Hayward away. So, it's kind of frustrating as a Pacers fan, but you know what? I don't fault the Pacers, and I don't fault Gordan Hayward. I mean, it kind of, and I think it's something too that if it comes out in 5 years that Oladipo, I left because they didn't get Gordan Hayward, I'll be like, you know what did you want us to do? Pay him, 5 years, $160 million, and really, tie up the team? Like, what did you want? So, it stinks, but you know what? It is what it is.
I feel like had a deal been able to be made, I think Gordan Hayward probably would have come here for the 4 years, $100 million that the Pacers were offering him. It was the Boston end of things that really held everything up, which is really surprising to me, because they ultimately still did a sign and trade for Gordan Hayward with the Charlotte Hornets. The Celtics sent Gordan Hayward and future second round draft picks to the Charlotte Hornets for a trade exemption. which is about $28 million in cap space. So now Boston has to figure out, how do we use that when the free agent market is essentially dried up? Who are you going to trade with now? I mean, the one tradable piece that you had is gone. He's gone. Are you willing to give up Marcus Smart? Are you willing to give up Jaylen Brown? You said no. Now, so are you going to dip into some of these unplayed guards that you have? I don't know. It feels like Boston really asked for way too much, and then when Gordan basically tied their hands to Charlotte, they just kind of had to get whatever they could. And I feel like if Boston would have really taken the deal of Turner and McDermott, or tried to rework it for like Turner and Lamb or something like that, that would have been okay for them. But what inside sources with Boston are saying is that they've never been very high on Miles Turner. So they felt like they would be doing the Pacers more of a favor by taking on Miles Turner. So in order to do that, they wanted something more in return, because they didn't think Miles Turner is good enough of an investment to trade Gordan Hayward for. So ultimately, that's what the biggest hangup was, is that they really didn't want Miles Turner, but they knew the Pacers needed to get rid of Miles Turner because there's such a logjam at the center position for Indiana. So that's basically why things didn't work out in the end. And I don't know. I'm on the fence about how I feel of whether or not I'm okay with it not going through, or if I am. Essentially, the Pacers did not do too much, mostly because they didn't have the cap space to do too much. I mean, I love that they brought back Justin Holiday. I felt like that was a must. I love the fact that they traded TJ Leaf. I felt like that was a must, especially if you want to get some more minutes, try to figure out more minutes for Goga. I still am curious to see how this team plays. I mean, I know Boston wasn't all in on Miles Turner, but Miles Turner's a good player. So now how are you going to break down the minutes between Miles Turner and Domas Sabonis, who's an all-star? That's going to be tough. But at the same time, I also do like the fact that the front office sat down with some of the key leaders on the team, and the players said, hey, look, we're all healthy for once. Let's run this thing back, and let's see what we can actually do together, because we've never all played together healthy. If you think about it, Oladipo was out for a good portion of the beginning of the season. He came back, COVID happened. Or if he was back, Malcolm Brogdon was injured. When they both came back, then Sabonis was injured in the bubble. Jeremy Lamb, the injury to him. I'm okay with the fact we want to see what this team can do by running it back. By everybody's healthy now. Let's see what we can do, because there were high expectations on this team being completely healthy, but they just never were. So I'm okay with that. And then if you feel like there is a move to be made because players are proving themselves to be valuable trade assets, like let's say Miles Turner goes out and just is having a really good year, and Sabonis is having a really good year, and Goga is showing that he has made improvements as well. Well, guess what? The trade deadline's not too far away from now. You can make that move, send Miles Turner to somebody, and get some serviceable pieces in return, or draft picks for the next year draft. Same thing goes with Oladipo. If he looks like he's back to form and you guys don't feel like he's going to return, I mean, it's going to be tough to have him return still with Miles Turner on the roster as well, because of how money's tied up. Just by him playing those games and proving it to everybody that he's healthy, you can trade him for a ton. Well, maybe not a ton, because he's only going to be a rental at that point. But you can trade it, probably get more for him at the trade deadline than you could this offseason anyways. So I'm completely fine with running it back with what they had last year. I still feel like getting rid of TJ Leaf was the right move, and in doing what they had to do and bringing back Justin Holiday was probably a key move. I
Yeah.
mean, that he was a Swiss Army knife for this team. If you want to talk about one of the most underrated players on that entire roster, it's Justin Holiday.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think looking back at it, back at the Pacers offseason, I think the fact that they did bring back Holiday. We didn't see anything drastic trade wise, even though we thought it was going to happen. Like, I think you look at this offseason, especially with being as short as it was, with being pretty successful. Yeah, I think the floor for this team is, what, maybe some pieces get traded. Maybe they end up getting swept again in the first round of the playoffs. But I think you look at it, and I think at the end of the day, you kind of come back to it and you say, you know what, I think this team could play really well. I think they could be in the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference because we haven't seen a whole lot of changes. We haven't seen, the Bucks have gone, made some moves here and there, but they were expected to be at the top anyway. You've seen the Raptors pretty much stay the same. The Heat have stayed the same. I think the Sixers will be down. So the Celtics are, actually now down Gordan Hayward, so we'll see. I mean, obviously he's been injured a lot, so I don't
Gordon
know.
Hayward was out so much
Yeah, so
wise.
um,
I think that he was coming off the bench
right.
in the bubble anyways. So I think that's for them, that's almost addition by subtraction.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think, if you want to look at the glass half full, I think you look at it as, well, hey, maybe the Pacers at the deadline trade Miles Turner, get somebody that can, either get somebody that can maybe kind of appease Oladipo and say, if you believe the stories of him going up to other teams and telling him that yeah, he's on his way out and he wants to go play with them instead. But if he's on his way out or whatever, if you're trying to kind of make that last minute plea, if he's playing well, like, hey, we're gonna go out, trade Miles Turner and try to get somebody, or if they are thinking, hey, you know what, we're not only gonna be without Miles Turner, but we're also gonna be without Oladipo after this season. Let's stock up on draft picks. We're gonna build this team around Sabonis. So I think this team, we've talked a lot about being optimistic about where this team is heading, and I think it's taken a lot longer to kind of get to where we want to get to, because of different things, COVID, the injury to Oladipo, that kind of thing. But I think that there's really no scenario with this season where I see it being like a negative year. Like, I don't see, nothing happening with Turner. I don't see we trade Turner for nothing and Oladipo leaves and we're just kind of left with the cupboard bare. I think I think this is going to be a pivotal transition year kind of for the Pacers, and I think it's going to be one for the better.
Yeah, I totally agree. Honestly, I would not be the least bit surprised. I don't think they would try to trade Turner. I think, if anything, they're going to look to trade Oladipo first. And
but you think, like, so let's say Oladipo and Turner are playing well, and you're in the running, like, and Sabonis is playing well. Like, everybody, the team is clicking on all cylinders like you'd expect it to be. Like, I don't see them trading Oladipo or trying to trade Oladipo before they can trade Turner, because Turner's where they've got the logjam, and if they're trying to kind of because if they're playing well, because remember, the reason why we're kind of like, you know what, Victor, you do you, is because he's had one good season, 1.5 if you want to count the first half before he got injured a couple of years ago, and really hasn't been the guy. But if he's showing this year that he can be the guy, the Pacers feel better about him. Heck, I think they may, I don't know what the Pacers, how they feel about negotiating a contract in season, but, if they're playing well and they trade for somebody at the deadline, I think that's going to look good for them. Because if you look back on it, the Pacers get, a solid piece and a draft pick or two for Miles Turner, then I think that's kind of, at least the Pacers can, like, look back at the fan base and say, hey, look, not only did we trade for somebody that can play alongside Oladipo and give us the best chance to win, in 2020, 2021, but, we got some draft picks too, so even if Oladipo does end up leaving, we've got, some draft picks stocked up to try to rebuild, or restock a little bit.
See, for me, I think the biggest key player for this upcoming season in potentially trying to form a big three here in Indy is TJ Warren. if TJ Warren can continue to play the way he did in the bubble, there's no reason that he can't be considered an all-star. I mean, he played at an all-star level. He played at an MVP level in the bubble. So if he can continue that play, I think having him around could be incentive for Oladipo to stay. I think honestly at that point, then you need to look to trade Miles Turner for draft assets, because you can't be bringing in other big pieces and then expect to re-sign TJ Warren to a bigger contract than he currently is on. I mean, you got to remember, TJ Warren is basically on a nothing contract right now, and he's playing at a high level. So eventually this is a guy that has to get paid as well, and he's not on a very long contract. So his time is coming up, and I think he could honestly be a key piece in convincing Oladipo to stay here, and you create a big three, potentially big four of Malcolm Brogdon, Victor Oladipo, TJ Warren, and Domas Sabonis. I think if you can do that and then say, hey, look, we're going to build up our depth behind the draft and make these smart financial moves, and we've got our 3 or 4 that can really lead this team, and then we have these other pieces back here that are really good supportive pieces as well. I think that's kind of the best possibility for the Pacers, to build that from within. And from what we've seen from TJ Warren, if he can continue that, I mean, I feel like that's a very strong possibility.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But at the same time, it is Indiana, and TJ Warren might be like, you know what? Thank you for giving me my chance, but I'm out of here. I'm heading to LA.
I mean, maybe. I just think that, because even if it's just a rental piece, and I think you can get a rental piece and draft assets.
If it's a rental piece, I didn't think about.
Well, I mean, because I mean, they're not. I don't think they're gonna get. It's beyond the point where they're gonna be able to trade for like another like star, like all-star caliber player with Miles Turner. I feel like maybe, unless it's just a 1-for-1. Like if it's a 1-for-1 with nothing, and then if that's the case, I don't want that.
Unless the Golden State Warriors are like, okay, we're tired of Klay Thompson being injured, we'll take anything for him now at this point.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing for sure. But yeah, I mean, but it also can work both ways too. Because if they bring in another, even if it's not a rental, another piece that's better than Warren, I mean, there you go. You don't have to worry about resigning.
I don't know. The way TJ Warren was playing in the bubble, it's going to be hard to find anybody better.
True.
If he can continue that level of play, I think you almost build your team around TJ Warren and Domas Sabonis.
True. Well, it will be interesting, and we'll know here in a couple of weeks once the season gets started, which is crazy to think about. The preseason.
There's no breaks.
There are no breaks. Not after what I mean. They just had basically.
We had a huge break.
Yeah, there was a huge break where there was nothing going on. But before we get into the college football talk, let's go ahead and get this word from Anchor. The Crash Course Podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device, and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need in a podcast in one place. All right, B. Scott, we're heading back to the roots of our friendship and our radio career together. We're going to talk some conference realignment.
We're Beep Hope when we need them.
It's been 10 years, believe it or not. It has been a decade since teams kind of basically, I had forgot about this until I really started kind of deep diving on it. I forgot about the whole like everybody freaked out because Texas was going to go to the Pac-12, and then they were like, oh no, we're going to be an independent, and they were like, we got our own network, which they ended up getting. And I mean whatever, it's not really changed a whole lot, but like everybody freaked out because Texas was going to move, and then beyond that,
wasn't Boise State going to go to the Big East, and Ball State was going to join them, and
yeah, it was going to be, which Ball State in the Big East now. I think Ball State's good in the MAC, especially with what we've been seeing, especially lately. I think
3-1 this year.
Well, I mean, dude,
That's
could you
good.
imagine? Could you imagine if Ball State had gone to the Big East and it had been like, all right, we're gonna go play Syracuse every couple of games, and we're gonna play UConn, and we're gonna go play,
We're gonna play Louisville.
oh my gosh, that would have just been completely awful.
Oh,
And that's
playing UConn.
that's
Playing UConn. I mean, that's an easy one.
and that's the thing that's like crazy to think is that when all this happened, a lot of people forgot about the basketball side, which we're gonna take a look at the basketball side as well, because I remember watching. They were talking about where teams were going to move, and one of the things that was talked about was Kansas as a football school moving to the Mountain West. Which, as a football school, that makes sense. I don't even think they win the Mountain West in football if they move, because Kansas just doesn't care. It's like Kentucky football; they just don't care. And so I was like, maybe that'll work out. But then I was like, could you imagine being TCU? Now, like a TCU is a team I thought of immediately because I think. That was where, whenever they were talking about the Mountain West, that's where the reporter was or whatever, which is crazy because they now are in the same conference because they're in the Big 12. But I was like, man, could you imagine being any team in the Mountain West in basketball being like, really? We had an NCAA tournament bid like locked down, and now it was bad enough we had Utah and BYU, the Jimmer Fredettes of the world. Now we got to deal with freaking Kansas basically chalking up two or three loss season every year playing in the Mountain West. Like, what are we doing? So it's just crazy to think about, where like the thought process was. And really, I mean, honestly, I looking at some of the teams that ended up moving, like, I don't think like overall any team looks back and says like, oh yeah, that was a great move. I think here or there, like it has been okay for certain teams, but like not a whole lot has changed across the landscape of college football.
Yeah, I mean, it is just so strange looking back. Honestly, if I have to look at these different conferences that made the different moves, if I'm obviously it was all because of the potential coming of the college football playoff. We wanted to make everything deeper. I feel like the Big 12 kind of got sucker punched. And they don't have. I mean, for a while there, they did not have a conference championship game because they didn't have enough teams. They still don't have enough teams, and they just kind of do their best with it. But looking at it from a basketball perspective, I have to say the Big Ten probably came out ahead of the pack.
Yeah. Well, because like both
Big Ten and the ACC,
yeah,
I feel
because those two basketball conferences are elite. Like they're amazing.
They always have been.
Right.
But
even more so now.
So the Big Ten adding Maryland was a big deal. Because Maryland's the national champ. They won the national championship here in the last 20 years, and they beat IU to do it. But I mean, honestly, the ACC getting Syracuse and Pitt at that time, that was a huge, huge deal basketball-wise. Syracuse was a perennial national title contender. Pitt was a top 10 team year in and year out. Now, not so much right anymore, but those were big additions. And now, I mean, obviously they got Louisville, and that's a big, big deal now. I mean, since joining the ACC, Louisville has won a national championship.
Yeah.
They won a national championship. They did. It's just it doesn't exist.
It's in the same place that Reggie Bush's Heisman is.
Yes, the store. There's some hidden storage facility off of Washington Boulevard, I believe, that here in Indy that has all those banners and trophies. But it is really funny how these teams just kind of started grabbing, or these conferences started grabbing for teams based off of football. And I think that was our biggest argument. I mean, because our host of the show, Brandon Pope, this was his thing every week. The what ifs. And I mean, some of these what ifs were like, how'd you come up with that one? But our biggest argument was some of these moves they make sense on paper for football, but you got to remember these conferences are also realigning for basketball. And it really shook things up because the Big East ceased to exist as we knew it. Now, the Big East is back in everything but football. The Big East, has soccer, swimming, women's basketball, men's basketball, all of that. And it's helped significantly a lot of schools like Creighton, like Butler, and it's allowed those original Big East schools, because you got to remember the Big East, it was not a football power by any stretch of the amount.
Well, I mean, at one point it was. Yeah, because they had West Virginia, Miami, Boston College, Virginia Tech, like Pitt. Yeah.
I mean, West Virginia was one win away from making the BCS national championship game, and they lost to Pitt.
13-9.
So, yeah, I mean, they were at one point. UConn even made it to a BCS bowl game at one point. But they were truly a basketball conference. I mean, conference tournaments for basketball were a big deal, or have always been a big deal, and they've been fun to watch. But the Big East tournament was one of those that you watched. You would tune into the Big Ten tournament, Big Ten championship game for sure, because it was right before. It's always been right before the announcement of the brackets. But the Big East tournament was an event. I mean, the showdowns, but I mean, the Syracuse games. Those games. I mean, so typically that was a basketball conference that was completely dissolved, and it now is just a basketball conference. Obviously, the old Big East is now the American Athletic Conference, and it's run by Houston and Cincinnati. I mean, who would have thought? So I think those are two teams that are going to be up for grabs the next time this whole thing gets shaken up even more, when there's an expanded playoff. But it was so intriguing, because all these rumors and just everything was moving. It was kind of hard to keep up with. And really the one that started it all, it was that one piece, that domino that fell. And once that domino fell, everybody started scattering. That was Nebraska to the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was the one we talked about all the time, because that was the one that was basically a done deal. That was a done deal for almost a year. It just had to be kind of put in writing and signed on a dotted line. So that was the big piece. And once Nebraska left the Big 12 or the Big 10, everybody just kind of started. It was a free fall. It was a free for all at that point. And I think at some point it did get a little out of hand.
And that was a crazy move too, because that was like Nebraska Nebraska was not, Eric Crouch national championship Nebraska, but they were a team, but they had Ndamukong Suh, Heisman Trophy and
Big 12 champion contender.
Yeah.
Now, Ndamukong Suh never played in the Big 10. But they were, for a while there, year in and year out, they were playing either Texas or Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship.
Yeah.
So at that point, when Nebraska came, I remember thinking, oh boy, that's a big one right there. I mean, that's the Big Ten throwing a haymaker at Ohio State and Michigan, saying, hold on to your hats, boys. You're not the only big boys in town anymore. Here's Nebraska.
Yeah, look how that's gone.
What a joke that's been.
I mean, really.
1-4 Nebraska, led by the savior Scott Frost.
I mean, you think about it too. Nebraska, there's been a lot of I don't want to say since that move was made, but there's been a lot of teams, with the exception of Wisconsin and Michigan State. There's been a lot of Big Ten schools like the Michigans of the world that have that have kind of fallen back a little bit since that move was made.
Well, isn't Nebraska's on their third head coach?
Yeah, it was Bo Pelini, then it was the coach from Oregon State, and then it was Scott Frost. So yeah, they're on the third one. But yeah, well, you mentioned the timeline. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. 2011, the Big Ten does add Nebraska from the Big 12. The Pac-12 adds Colorado from the Big 12 and Utah from the Mountain West. That's pretty much all the Pac-12 was able to do. In 2012, the Big 12 adds TCU from the Mountain West, West Virginia from the Big East. And then the SEC adds Texas A&M and Missouri. Those are really the only two schools that the SEC adds. 2013, Syracuse and Pitt join the ACC from the Big East. That's part of the Big East kind of dissolving as a basketball conference. And then in 2014, the Big Ten adds Maryland from the ACC, Rutgers from the American Athletic Conference, and then Louisville goes from the ACC to the from the American Athletic Conference from the I keep getting jumbled up. Louisville goes to the ACC from the American Athletic Conference. So, and that was really, the Big East, turned into the American Athletic Conference, but it still had it had Louisville and had Pitt and Syracuse, and could have been kind of just the second iteration of the Big East, or at least been a more notable conference. But then after 2014, everybody was gone pretty much. Leaving just basically Cincinnati, and I think later they added UCF and all that kind of thing. So, those were kind of the big moves at the time. Now, granted, since then, you've seen Appalachian State move from, FCS to FBS. You've seen, Coastal Carolina get added, which that's where game day is going to be at, because I didn't realize they're a top 20 school. So you've seen some other teams move since then, but those were kind of the big kind of tectonic plates to move. As the college football scene kind of got moved around. But like I said, I think looking back on it, there's not a whole lot aside from like you said, Maryland into the Big Ten basketball wise, and even Louisville into the ACC basketball wise. But it's really been mainly impacted basketball wise. It's not really been a whole lot of football like it was originally looked at.
Yeah, I've already said my piece on it, to be honest.
So let's go ahead and hop into hot or cold, and that is a segment of the show where we basically pose a question. We tell you if it's a hot take or a cold take. But before that, we want to remind you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter, the Crash Course Podcast on YouTube. We do upload these hot or cold segments to the YouTube channel, so go ahead and check that out. Crash Course Podcast on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast, and also the Twitch channel. I just linked it, and I can link it again here. Twitch.tv/3C Media. That's where you can go for the live recording of the podcast, basically from here on out. So make sure you go follow there. As we try to be affiliate, because we can be affiliated if we get to a certain amount of numbers. So definitely go check that out. If you're listening here on Tuesday morning, go check out, subscribe to us all on all those social media pages. And remember, you can hear us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. So question number one, just kind of what we talked about. Maryland has benefited the most from joining the Big Ten. For me, that's a hot take, because really neither Rutgers, Nebraska, or Maryland have really benefited from moving over in football. Nebraska has basically just been Notre Dame with more corn. They have this big history, of great play, coming into the Big Ten, and really have not done much of anything since moving over. They have that one Big Ten championship appearance where they got walloped by Wisconsin, and then Nebraska basketball really hasn't been anything. Rutgers had that big, season when they were in the Big East in 2008. That's been about all they've been able to do football-wise, and that, recently, and they haven't done anything since joining the Big Ten except for just lose football games. The basketball program's starting to come around now, but still, I don't think that's really a credit to them being in the Big Ten. I think that's just, them, I think maybe probably recruiting a little bit better, getting back on the right track. And then Maryland football, they were, the ACC, they were okay. They were kind of like an NC State in the ACC before, where they were kind of just a thorn in the side of all the kind of bigger programs and not really too much of anything. But from a football standpoint, they really haven't done much in the Big Ten either. But as far as basketball is concerned, the Terrapins have 4 NCAA tournament bids in 6 years in the Big Ten, 5 opportunities to do so. Obviously, they probably would have made the tournament this year, but there was no tournament this year. They have made 1 Sweet 16 appearance since being in the Big Ten. and they are 2019 regular season champs. In the seasons prior to the move from the ACC, they had one NCAA tournament bid and one NIT bid. So they have definitely now. You can say what you want about attributing that specifically to being in the Big Ten, but as far as teams having success since their move to the Big Ten, I think Maryland's really the one program of the six. Both basketball sides, and football sides. I think Maryland, you could argue, has been the biggest beneficiary of that move to the Big Ten because really there's not too much else to speak of.
I'm actually going to say this is a cold take. Maryland hasn't done anything that they couldn't have done in the ACC. Like you said earlier, it's the Big Ten and the ACC. Those are the two best in college basketball. So they really haven't. I mean, it's not big. Well, look, they've gotten better because the competition's better. Well, the competition's equal. Let's be honest. It's the Big Ten and the ACC.
But I think if you look at the other programs, though, they've either fall off or not gained. Okay.
I'm getting there.
I'll let you go.
Rutgers and Nebraska have never really been basketball powers.
No.
To be honest. Now, in women's basketball, Rutgers has. Nebraska, none of the above. But since they've joined the Big Ten, we're seeing Rutgers. They're a top 25 team right now. They're in the top. They're in today's AP poll. I think they came in at 24. They are a projected tournament team. Nebraska has made the tournament since joining the Big Ten. Part of that, I do believe, is, Maryland, this may not affect as much, but I think it is affecting Nebraska and Rutgers much more on the basketball side of things because they are now a part of the Big Ten budget. They receive the financial rewards from the Big Ten. So they're able to go out and so that means there's more money in the recruiting budget. Nebraska, for instance, I don't think in the past they would have been able to hire a head coach like Steve Kerr. Not Steve Kerr.
Breaking news on the Crash Course podcast.
As I was saying, I'm realizing that's the Golden State Warriors head coach. Oh my gosh.
No, but so then I guess you could theoretically
coach at Iowa State for a while. He played.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Fred Hoiberg.
Fred Hoiberg.
Definitely not close to Steve Kerr as far as names go.
White guys that can play basketball.
But no, so I guess theoretically in that light, you could look at Rutgers being the biggest beneficiary because
I think Rutgers is the beneficiary because of the money side of
things.
Right,
so that's what I was going to say. Because
so much more money as an athletic department than they ever were in the Big East. So that alone, if you wanted to say who has performed the best since joining the Big Ten, oh yeah, easily, hands down, Maryland has performed the best all across all boards. But ultimately, I think Rutgers is the biggest beneficiary of joining the Big Ten. And let's be honest, the Big Ten didn't go out and reach out to Rutgers because they said, man, we need Rutgers here because they are going to help us get better. No. Basically,
we need a 14th.
We need you to scratch our back and we'll scratch yours. We need each other for reasons outside of competition. We need Rutgers because we need to get into the New Jersey, New York television markets for the Big Ten network to make more money. Rutgers, you need to join the Big Ten so you can make more money. Ultimately, they benefited each other, but I think because of that, Rutgers has become the biggest beneficiary of joining the Big Ten.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's a different take.
Just a different way to look at it because I think you look at Maryland. I honestly they just are the only program of those six that just hasn't been completely awful. Yes, Rutgers has come back here recently, but we haven't because of no tournament this year. You can't really say and like I said, Nebraska's made one too. So I get what you're saying.
Nebraska, I believe Nebraska was on pace to actually make the tournament this past year. They put together a decent team that had quite a few transfers. Now they're all gone now, so I don't think it's going to be as good of a year for them this year. But Nebraska never had a basketball tradition to begin with, and they came in more for the football side of things, and it's benefiting their basketball team that they don't always have to play Kansas every year. Instead you get to play Ohio State, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. You get to play in the Big Ten instead. We're not just we don't have a big team like Kansas, but we are deep.
So moving on to the SEC now, Missouri and Texas A&M are relevant in the SEC. To me, that is a cold take. You've got Missouri, who has made two SEC football championship appearances, two SEC East football championships. They have made two NCAA tournament appearances, is what I think I meant to write. I put NCAA titles, but that's not true at all. So NCAA tournament appearances. Texas A&M has had two Sweet 16s in basketball. But really, I mean, the SEC as a conference in basketball is pretty much nothing without Kentucky. And yes, Florida, occasionally is up there, battling, for, NCAA tournament relevance and that kind of thing. And Alabama's had some good seasons basketball wise, but Alabama football has also been the most dominant on the other side of things. I mean, Texas A&M and Missouri have had good seasons, but they just haven't been, I don't think, relevant as far as, an SEC championship concerned. They haven't really been in the running there. And as far as like anything prominent as far as a national scale, they haven't really been a part of. So I'm going to say it's a cold take because they haven't really done much. I think, once the Big 12 was starting to hemorrhage, I think they just were like, hey, you know what? We're kind of in SEC territory. At the time, Missouri was coming off of the Chase Daniel era. And who was their wide receiver that was really good and played in the NFL for a little bit? Jeremy Maclin. They were coming off the Jeremy Maclin era. As well, and so they were kind of in a good position football wise. And then you look at Texas A&M. Even going into the SEC, they had Johnny Manziel, they had Ryan Tannehill. So it definitely they had a lot of reasons to go ahead and join the SEC. They were at the time their football programs were on the right track, but I think they've just kind of faded away as their time in the SEC has gone by. And then basketball-wise, I mean, they've had a couple of good runs, but ultimately Kentucky reigns supreme, and ultimately, Alabama football reigns supreme. And you can kind of make that argument in the Big Ten as well with Ohio State football, but at the same time, I mean, I just don't think, I don't think Missouri and Texas A&M regret their moves to the SEC, but I think they're like, man, you know what?
I think Missouri does.
I think they're probably thinking, you know what, the Big 12 seems a lot more appetizing now than it did when they were kind of at the height of their football relevance.
Yeah, I agree. This is a cold take. I think this is a lukewarm take. I think Missouri is absolutely not relevant in the SEC. They were early on because they came into the SEC and got put into the weakest division of the entire SEC at that time. Florida was way down. South Carolina was down. I mean, the toughest opponents that they had, I mean,
Tennessee wasn't very good.
Tennessee and
Georgia was probably the best team.
And Georgia wasn't very good at that point in time. I mean,
they were transitioning from Mark Richt, I think, at the time.
Yeah. Or they were near the end of Mark Richt.
Yeah.
And he didn't exactly instill greatness in that team at that point in time. Missouri came in and they had some talent already, what's surprising is that they have not been able to keep up that talent. Joining the SEC, two SEC East football titles, two SEC championship appearances. Yeah, you got your doors blown off each time by Alabama and maybe LSU or Auburn. It's a number of those three. But it's really surprising that they have not been able to maintain or increase their recruiting by joining the SEC. I mean, with being so close to St. Louis is a talent-filled area for all sports. And to have an SEC team in their backyard, essentially, and for Missouri not to take advantage of that, or maybe they are and they're just not utilizing it correctly. I mean, it's really kind of shocking. They're not even on the short list for. I mean, I occasionally see them in a top 10 for a player, like that Purdue is in on, but it's really kind of surprising to me that Missouri hasn't been able to capitalize in football joining the SEC. Now Texas A&M, I feel like they have. I really do, because they got put in the hardest division in the SEC. They have to play Alabama. They have to play Auburn, and so on and so on. This is a very, I think that has helped them. Have they won very much? Well, no, nobody in that division has won many West titles because Alabama's there. So I'm not putting that on Texas A&M, but Texas A&M is one of the very few teams in the SEC to actually have beaten Alabama in the last decade. That's in itself is a huge deal. Texas A&M has had a Heisman Trophy winner. Would Johnny Manziel have been viewed so highly had he still been in the Big 12?
Well, I mean, you can't really say that because Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. So I mean,
true.
Robert Griffin
But that was
III.
also with Oklahoma. Those guys were with Oklahoma.
Right, but I'm saying like if
Oklahoma's got a different spotlight on them.
Right, but I mean, well, what about Robert Griffin III?
That's true. So I don't. As I said, I don't know if that would have been, but you know, I feel like Texas A&M's been more relevant in the SEC. Have they been more relevant than they were in the Big 12? Maybe, perhaps. I mean, because when they came over, they weren't exactly a world beater in the Big 12 either by any stretch of the imagination. And now they're consistently a top 25 team, top 20, but even top 15. So I think they've benefited from joining the SEC for sure. That's why I say it's lukewarm.
Yeah.
One, totally irrelevant in all regards. And then Texas A&M.
Kind of in the middle.
Texas A&M. I mean, it's hard to tell because they weren't very good when they left the Big 12, but they've gotten better. So I feel like they've taken advantage of being in the SEC.
Now this one is more for just the football side. It actually is completely for the football side. Louisville football has benefited the most from joining the ACC, and I think that is actually a cold take. And the reason why I say that is because the Pitt Panthers, surprisingly enough, I didn't realize this when I kind of looked into it a little bit more, but they did have a 2018 ACC championship berth. They have finished 3 of 7 seasons in the ACC ranked in the top 25, whereas Louisville has only finished ranked twice. No ACC championship appearances for Louisville. And then you also look at Syracuse in the ACC. They haven't done a whole lot either. They've just kind of been a thorn in the side of Clemson at times and of Louisville at times when Louisville had Lamar Jackson. So, you know, Pitt has actually done kind of what they did in the Big East, to be honest. Kind of not really been a fantastic program, but had some good players, stuck around, and been the thorn in the side of kind of some of the better teams, and has ultimately had a better run of things. So I think they now basketball wise, Pitt has been atrocious since their move to the ACC,
which is surprising. It's so surprising.
Oh yeah, it was like because Pitt used to be one of the teams. It used to be so frustrating because they would be a top-ranked team. They'd lose in the first round of the AC or the Big East tournament, and so when I was filling out my bracket, I'd be like, okay, well, Pitt, obviously is kind of a pretender. They've not done much of anything, and then they'd make like a Sweet 16 run. I'm like, well, dang, like they lost the first round of the Big East tournament. That was before I kind of paid attention a little bit more than I do now, but or than I did before now. So. But anyway, I mean, still, Pitt basketball has been atrocious, and if we're looking at the basketball side, it's definitely not Pitt. But just looking at the football side of things, Pitt has made, I think, benefited the most from their move to the ACC.
I'm actually going to say Louisville has. This is a hot take. Mostly, I'm going to put it all on one thing. Yeah, have they been great? No, they really haven't. But I don't think Lamar Jackson would have won a Heisman Trophy staying in the AAC. I don't. I think
That
they would have said they would have looked at that competition and gone, um, that's it's not good enough. It's not good enough competition. Yeah, congratulations. You put up big numbers against Tulsa. You put up big number. I mean, it's it is definitely it was a big help for him to be in the ACC. Okay, yeah, you put those numbers up against Florida State. You put those numbers up against Miami, against Clemson, against North Carolina, Virginia Tech. That I think they benefited greatly from that.
that actually is a pretty interesting like question. Like how like you look back and you wonder like what I'm always intrigued by that kind of stuff. Like you know kind of like the butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. Where like yeah, if Lamar Jackson's in the AAC, he probably doesn't win a Heisman. He's probably not a like first round draft pick quarterback, and he's probably like not
He
one of
might
the
still be. He might still be.
maybe, but like I don't know because like remember going into that draft, you're like, well, should he be a running back? Should he be a wide receiver?
Oh
And
yeah.
like,
I
and
think that those questions would have still been there regardless.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, would he have still been drafted in the first round? Would he have been given an opportunity as early as he was given an opportunity?
I don't
And
think
would he
so.
be, you know, because you could all, because I mean, there's, and that's always the fun thing about those kind of debates because there's a side that's like, well, I mean, fate is fate. Whatever it's gonna be is whatever it's gonna be. So like, yes, he would have been maybe not a first rounder, but he would have eventually become. You know, one of the best players in the NFL, but there's also the other side of that. Like, would he have gotten the opportunity with the stigma of not being from, you know, a power conference and not, you know, having those numbers? Okay, we draft him in the third round. Let's see what he does. And then he has like a, you know, a bad run of things, you know, and plays poorly in the playoffs. All right, well, you know, maybe it's time to go back to Joe Flacco or whatever they would have said, you know, and so who knows? And so that's kind of the crazy thing I like getting into sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think he would have been considered. I don't think the Ravens would have moved back into the first round to take Lamar Jackson.
No, not at all. So yeah, so I mean, from that standpoint, I'm with you. I like we're disagreeing a lot more, but they're for good. I think they're for good reasons. Like you're taking a different look at it than I am, and I like it. This is good stuff. Um, so moving on now, West Virginia has benefited most from joining the Big 12. To me, that's actually a cold take. A lot of cold takes to get in that time of year. It's almost December. It is December if you're listening on the or if you're watching on the YouTube or you're listening on the podcast apps. So a lot of cold takes being thrown at you right now, but I think that's a cold take. Because TCU, we talked about them a little bit earlier, but TCU has had a lot of good fortune since joining the Big 12. From the football side of things, you know, they've been in contention for a couple of Big 12 titles. They probably, if the NCAA wasn't trying to stick it to the Big 12, they probably could have been in the first college football playoff because that was the year that the Big 12 said, "Oh, you know you won a championship game. We're gonna name co-champions so we can get two teams in." And then the NCAA said, "Nope. How about zero teams? And how about we like not put any teams in unless you're Oklahoma?" So you know TCU was in a position to actually be in a college football playoff. And as far as like college basketball is concerned. You know, they had an NCAA tournament bid in 2018. And again, two Big 12 title games in football. You know, so the basketball side of things is starting to turn it around. The football side of things has actually gotten better since their move from the Mountain West to the Big 12. And then you look at it from the side of things for West Virginia. They've really declined football wise. They are a shadow of their former selves as far as football goes, and they've got 4 NCAA tournament bids since joining the Big 12, but they also had 3 from 2010 to 2013 when they were in the Big East and AEC or whatever it was. So they've had pretty much the same success that they would have had normally, and TCU I think has really skyrocketed. From in all facets, they've really come together, and I think if you look at the grand scheme of all the teams that have made the big moves here and there, I think TCU's up there for the team that's kind of come out on good fortunes, and maybe it's because they're in Texas, maybe it's because hey yeah we're technically a smaller school, but we're in Texas, so we have all that great access to recruiting. You can make that argument, but I think they're definitely front runners for of all the teams that moved, the team that's benefited the most.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely a cold take on West Virginia. Um, the reason I mean, I agree with TCU being the biggest benefactor of this, especially on the basketball side of things. I mean, hey, TCU just had a first round draft pick the other night in the NBA draft, so they're going places. But the reason I think this is a cold take for West Virginia is because geographically, this always made zero sense for them to join the Big 12. They are constantly having to travel a long distance. I mean, they're so far away from the Big 12 that honestly, I forget that they are part of the Big 12. Let's just be honest. I don't remember that they are. And I think because of that, that puts their teams at a disadvantage. That having to travel that much and that far consistently, that's tough. That is tough on a student athlete. And I'm surprised West Virginia hasn't looked to make a move somewhere else because it hasn't benefited them one bit being in the Big 12. If anything, it's probably costed them money because of all the travel they have to do. I mean, at least maybe join the AAC. It's everybody's right there. I mean, the farthest you may have to travel is Tulsa, but it's a whole lot better than, oh man, we got 3 road games in a row and we are to TCU, then back home. Then we're to Oklahoma, then we're back home. Then we're to Oklahoma State and then back home. I mean, that's a lot. You've traveled the country and a half essentially after those 3 weeks. That's a lot of traveling, maybe more. I'm not good at math. I'm trying to do this, imagine it in my mind as I'm saying it. It's probably
B. Scott, you give me the actual mileage right now. All right, you tell me what it is.
I'm looking at a map on my head. So to TCU and back, there's basically one stretch of the country. To Oklahoma and back, another stretch. To Oklahoma State and back, another. So you've basically traveled almost the length of the country or the width of the country 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
I mean, nobody has to do that. I mean, look in the Big Ten. The farthest teams that are apart are Nebraska to Rutgers, I believe, or maybe Rutgers, or Maryland, one of those two. That's the farthest, and they're not even in the same division, so they don't have to worry about that. I mean, whereas in the Big 12, it's like, well, we play everybody, so that's a huge disadvantage for West Virginia, and I still am scratching my head trying to figure out why in the world they made that move.
Yeah, looking at it geographically, I think what would have made more sense is like Louisville to the Big Ten, West Virginia to the ACC. Like the ACC, if West Virginia wanted to continue being in a power conference, the best move was to go to the ACC or the Big Ten. But
they would have been a bigger fit in the Big Ten, I believe.
Yeah. So, but yeah, looking back on it now, I mean, who knows? Maybe when the next wave goes, maybe West Virginia is going to be on their way out so that the Big 12 can absorb Houston, and then you're going to see West Virginia and then Cincinnati go to the Big 10.
With all these what ifs, we need to get B Pope on the phone right now and he's the master at that.
See if he can weigh in on it. Final question. Pac-12 basketball has been better off with Colorado and Utah. I think I just meant Pac-12 in general because I also threw in some football stuff in here too. But the Pac-12 basketball has been better off with Colorado. I think it was meant to be football as well. But anyway, Pac-12 hasn't really been super relevant. That's what it was. I'm sorry. I couldn't read my own question for a second. That's okay, guys. You know what? We'll do it live. We are doing it live. The Pac-12. Wait.
We're not doing it live?
Hold on. Wait. The Pac-12 basketball has been better off with Colorado and Utah because those are two teams that moved, and that is a hot take. So I read down my other things I was gonna say, and I was like, why did I throw in football if we're talking about basketball? And then I reread the question. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I meant to ask. Hey, sometimes I just get confused, guys. It's fine. You know this. But the reason why it's a hot take is because between those schools, there have been 3 Pac-12 football title appearances with 0 titles between those schools. I think Colorado has made it a couple times, and Utah has made it. I think Utah's made it a couple times, and Colorado has made it once. Then there's 6 combined NCAA tournament berths in 8 seasons. 4 surprisingly enough for Colorado, 2 for Utah, but none since 2016. So you look at it from a basketball standpoint, the Pac-12, which, I mean, yes, in basketball you have the Arizona States, the Arizonas, the UCLAs of the world, but those schools haven't really been where you are used to seeing them here in recent memory. And so these two schools have actually kind of made the Pac-12 a little bit better by getting in the NCAA tournament every year. Whereas from the football side of things, I mean, and even from the basketball side of things, the Pac-12 as a conference, when I saw the fact that neither Colorado nor Utah had made it to the Pac-12 or had made it to the NCAA tournament since 2016, I was like, man, the Pac-12 as a whole has not been relevant since 2016 because that was when Washington made it for the college football playoff. So I think that the Pac-12 has not been the greatest conference at all, but I think definitely having Colorado and Utah making it to NCAA tournaments has made their basketball product look a little bit better, especially because Utah is a team that, again, kind of like TCU in football, transitioned from Utah was always good in the Mountain West. They moved to the Pac-12 and retained their dominance, and then you add Colorado, which was kind of never really good at basketball at all. They start to get better. So I think the Pac-12 product as a whole, especially during the downtime that Arizona has had, UCLA has had, Washington has had, Arizona State has had, I think it allows the whole entire product as a whole for the Pac-12 to be better.
Yeah, I agree. This is a hot take, mostly because of Utah. But it is surprising, though, that number 4 for Colorado and only 2 for Utah. I would have thought it would have been the other way around, to be honest. Um, I mean, Colorado and Utah are good basketball programs. Are they great? No, but they do help the resume of the Pac-12, especially with, I don't know, the Pac-12 is the Pac-12. There's just, it's one of those that if we do have conference realignment, I would not be surprised to see the Pac-12 dissolve. Maybe they're not, because nobody wants to have to travel to Oregon and play in the middle of the night. On a side note about the Pac-12, at least this year they're playing games before noon in their time zone, and so they're actually being shown in like our time zone at reasonable times. You don't have to stay up till 1 a.m. to watch a Pac-12 game. So that's a great move for them. That's making them as a conference, making them relevant at least. Now they can't get out of their own way in anything, but when you play all of your games, whether it's basketball, football, or anything, when 95% of your viewers have gone to bed already, it's hard. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it is hard, but they, like you said, they just haven't put out a big product that gets you to go, you know what, I got to stay up and watch this matchup. This is going to be a good one. I mean, UCLA hasn't been the same. Arizona, who knows what's going to happen there? That's a mess. Talent wise, they have talent. They've had it, but you get caught up by the FBI. Yikes. But it's just, I mean, it just seems like recently, anytime the Pac-12 has had success with one of their teams, it turns out they cheated. Maybe not Oregon. Oregon didn't. Oregon just they lost Chip Kelly, and they've been trying to find that same magic ever since. But it's I think it's always tough for a conference like the Pac-12, because anytime recently, especially in basketball, it seems like, oh, this was a really good team. Oh, but their top player got impermissible benefits, and now it's all for naught. And it's one of those things that it's hard to take the Pac-12 seriously, because you look at their track record here of late and go, I'm not going to waste my time. And I think, if anything, conference realignment probably, like, other than some of the conferences that completely dissolved, I think the Pac-12 honestly was hit the hardest. Yeah, they didn't really lose anything. They gained Colorado, they gained Utah. Did they lose anybody?
The Pac-12?
Yeah, I don't think
No,
they
they
lost.
didn't really.
No,
Yeah,
they didn't lose
because they
anybody.
were the Pac-10, and
But
then they added Utah and Colorado, and now the Pac-12.
yeah, they're the only they're the ones that actually changed their names. We got the Big 12 with 10 teams. We got the Big 10 with 14 teams. um, note to conferences: get the number out of your conference. Um, but I think for the Pac-12, because their moves of who they brought in weren't major splashes that was really going to move the needle significantly for them. I think they got completely overshadowed. And because of that, we kind of all lost touch with the Pac 12, especially since Oregon hasn't been the same. I mean, when Oregon was like throwing up near 100 points per game in football, people tuned in. People tuned in because that was a fun, exciting product to watch. Also, the whole thing with at that time, they were one of the only teams that had at least one alternate uniform, but they had many. So you always wanted to tune in to see what uniform Oregon was going to wear. But that appeal is gone now. And I feel like the Pac-12 is just kind of is trying to get their footing again, but it's just I don't know why they're struggling so much. I don't know why these Pac-12 schools are struggling so much. It's really baffling. But I do believe it is a hot take as far as basketball goes. When you can add good programs like Colorado and Utah, it's gonna make your conference better as a whole on the basketball side of things. It helps potentially with your other teams' RPIs because they have tougher schedules to play now in conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Pac-12 is lacking is they just need to because back in the day, I mean, look at the conferences. I mean, I think it would make sense for anything, but you look around the conferences, as far as in the Big Ten, you've got big name coaches like Jim Harbaugh. Now I know he's been struggling, but you've got Ryan Day, you've got Pat
Fitzgerald.
Yeah, Pat Fitzgerald. In the ACC, you've got obviously Dabo Sweeney. Who is it? Willie Taggart now at Florida State?
No, it's oh my God, Mike Norvell.
But you got Mac Brown at UNC, Brian Kelly. I mean, just for this year at Notre Dame. So what I'm getting at is, when I look at the Pac-12, especially for football, there's not that coach that there's not a big name head coach out there that's got a program really going. Back in the day when the Pac-12 was at least a little bit better, you had Pete Carroll, you had Jim Harbaugh, you had a lot of good names. Chip Kelly out there doing a lot of great things, and now there's really not a lot of anything. That's why I think Jim Harbaugh to USC would be such a big splash, but I mean, I don't think that's going to happen.
I feel like the biggest name they have out there is coaching right now, Herm Edwards.
Yeah, I forgot about Herm Edwards.
And I mean, he took over an Arizona State team that was kind of in disarray. They weren't great, and he's turning them around. He's building them back. So I'll be interested to see in about 2 seasons from now. I'd like to see where Arizona State's at as a football program. I think they could be the team that really helps get the Pac-12 potentially back going, because Herm Edwards is a notable name, and he's also a notable character.
Mm-hmm. True.
We all know Herm Edwards from his time on TV, but
and his time with the Jets,
he has a personality.
Yeah.
You
play to win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good old Herm Edwards. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in on Twitch. Thank you guys for all tuning in on YouTube, wherever you're taking this in, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, podcast apps, wherever. Remember, you can follow us at Crash Course FM on Twitter, Crash Course Podcast on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. And remember, we do record, and we are going to start recording every week live, twitch.tv/3C Media on Twitch if you want to check us out when we live record this on Monday, or you can hear us on Tuesdays wherever podcasts can be heard: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can hear the Crash Course podcast. You can be sure to catch some good conversation about sports. So thank you guys all for tuning in. B. Scott, before we leave, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87. Picking up my Twitter game more and more every week.
Awesome.
I went on a rant this past weekend.
You did? Oh yeah, we didn't give it. B. Scott, you've got the floor. I forgot all about your.
Really, it's not really a Purdue rant. It's more so a common theme that we've seen here in recent weeks with Big Ten officiating.
Yeah.
The Big Ten officiating, they're getting too involved. They're almost to a point where, it really big time. The big one was the end of the Purdue-Minnesota game, where basically they called a phantom offensive pass interference on a touchdown that Purdue ahead with a minute 30 left in the game.
Basically, if you haven't seen it, if you know the Kyle Rudolph play from last year in the Saints, Vikings game, that was a no call, and that was, I feel like, worse than what happened in the Purdue game.
Yeah, I mean, they were hand fighting with each other a little bit, like for half a second.
Not even. They barely touched each other.
They said Payne Durham, the Purdue tight end, pushed off. But what's really surprising, where the rant for me comes and the angst about that, is two things. One, the officials should. I think if you're going to make a rule for the NFL to be able to challenge pass interference calls, I think you need to do it in college too. They need to be reviewable, because that was totally one that would have been reversed. Two, officials, unless it's blatant, in those types of situations, you can't determine the outcome of the game. And in that game, they determine the outcome, essentially. I'm honestly surprised that another official with a different vantage point didn't step up and say, hey, I don't know what you were seeing. There was nothing there. But what's really interesting is this is the same official. Okay, so the official that threw the flag is from St. Paul, Minnesota. We're going conspiracy theory here now, guys. Hold on tight. Purdue fans are no longer about the face mask fumble. We are about the offensive pass interference that shouldn't have been.
Not as catchy of a name.
No, it's not. It's a little bit longer. It doesn't roll off the tongue. But we're past the Kyle Orton face mask fumble. We're past it now. We got something else. But this official is from St. Paul, Minnesota. And last season, he was also on the officiating crew and threw the flag that extended the game for Minnesota, or extended a Minnesota drive against Fresno State that ultimately wound up allowing Minnesota to kick a game-winning field goal, I believe it was. But his penalty flag enabled Minnesota to continue their drive that they won the game on. So a local guy, and now 2 calls that have gone in favor of Minnesota in back-to-back seasons.
There you go.
I'm not saying that, I mean, and that is legitimate. That is legit. But it's one of those things. It's like Big Ten, I think you need to kind of take a look into this guy, or at least say, hey, you're no longer doing Minnesota games. And then the Big Ten officials, they've just been very inconsistent all season. But I want to get off I don't want to really rant about anything like that. The one thing I want to talk about before we go off is today some news broke from the Indianapolis Colts that really kind of put you back in place. Indianapolis Colts punter Rigoberto Sanchez posted on his Instagram that later this week he will be undergoing surgery to remove a cancerous tumor that was found. So thoughts and prayers go out to Rigoberto Sanchez and his family and the Colts organization. If there's an organization to be a part of and going through something like this, the Colts organization has been there, done that, and excelled very well in helping the individual and the community surrounding them. Obviously, Chuck Pagano's first season as head coach when he was diagnosed with leukemia. just the support that came for him. I mean, to this day, I mean, yeah, he's no longer the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, but he's one of those guys that I think everybody loves and misses. And you want to see him succeed. But I have no doubt that the community of Indianapolis and the Colts organization will surround Rigoberto Sanchez with his battle with cancer and help him get right through this, and he'll be back booming punts in no time. I mean, it's funny that he put this out today, and he was punting just yesterday.
Yeah, that is wild. But yeah, thoughts and prayers do go out to him and a speedy recovery. And that will do it here for this edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in and listening. We will be back next week, but until then, have a good one, everybody.